Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, I rise to speak with great commitment and gladness in my heart to support this bill and the expansion in end-of-life choices it will gift all Tasmanians who are diagnosed with an incurable terminal illness. The choice to end their lives on their own terms in the arms of people who love them in peace and comfort. What more could we ask for the end of our time? I want to acknowledge and thank the many, many people who have campaigned with determination and passion for this bill over decades. Natalie and Jackie Gray, still here, amazingly, and tiny baby Tilly have been the public face of this bill, campaigning on behalf of their darling mum Diane, and I thank you for all the energy you've put into this campaign. But there have been plenty of public faces of previous campaigns, and earlier today Gideon and Nika Cordova came to watch the debate, as they had with their dear father and husband Robert when Nick McKim introduced the Dying with Dignity Bill in 2009. The Cordovas were here again in 2013 when the Voluntary Assisted Dying Bill was introduced by Nick McKim and Lara Giddings. By then, Robert had succumbed to motor neurone disease, and Gideon and Nika spoke publicly and movingly about the cruel fate for people suffering motor neurone disease and the hard truths about the way death comes and the need to change the law to allow for a dignified and pain-free death for others. They were here again in 2017 when Cassie O'Connor and Lara Giddings moved the Voluntary Assisted Dying Bill again. And the enduring energy behind all these voices, kindly and forcefully working for the right of all of us to die with dignity, has been Margaret Singh and the others in her group. And I so thank Margaret and all the people who are behind the scenes, privately, who have been working for decades, every day, some of them, bringing us the evidence and the voices of people who have died long and painful deaths, and the families who wish it were otherwise. Mr Deputy Speaker, bone-shaking grief, unbelievable longing and terrible dislocation. These are all normal feelings when someone you love intensely dies. Over time, most of us settle to a place of peace, and our memories are sweet and precious, even when they make us cry and feel empty inside. But it's very hard to find peace when the person you love suffered and died a long, undignified death that no amount of medication could relieve. It's very hard to find peace when they were forced to take the only path left to them, which was by violent means to end a horrendous and unbearable pain. And it's very hard to find peace if they pleaded or demanded for you to end their pain, but there was nothing legal you were allowed to do. And Mr Deputy Speaker, we've all received emails from people who've had these experiences, who are struggling to find peace and who are looking to the passage of this bill to give them some solace. So this bill will, I believe, give those people some solace, and it will end that situation for the future. It puts the choice and the decision to continue living with a terminal illness in pain or to die a dignified death, and that decision is in the hands of the person who is dying. In the 1990s, I supported young gay men who'd been handed what was then a life-ending diagnosis of AIDS. They were young and full of life. They weren't going to hand over decision-making about their medical treatment to doctors. They wanted to control the reins. And those young dying men shook up history, the very foundations of the doctor-patient relationship, and it's never been the same since. Good on them. They made sure that their doctor was acting for them and guiding them through the maze of decisions about what treatment responses they could have to the many painful ways that people died from AIDS. This bill acknowledges the centrality of the patient in making the ultimate choice about how they face their own certain death. The role of the doctor will be to provide wise counsel, to give expert medical assessment of the timing and process of the disease course, to provide access to the best palliative care available, to make sure the person has fully considered the implications of ending their life and that they're in a sound mind on multiple occasions when they make that final decision. Mr Deputy Speaker, since I first heard of Philip Nitschke's work, I've always supported the right of terminally ill people to choose when they die. My innate sense of what's right says I have no place trespassing on that private decision for another person. It's the biggest and most difficult decision any person could make in their lifetime. One time it might be mine to make too. Death is the most personal experience, and I don't think any of us can know how we will approach that moment if we even get a chance to consciously do so. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist and a neurologist. He was also a Jewish man and a Holocaust survivor. He was imprisoned in the Nazi death camps and survived for years among daily horrors and torture, the death of thousands around him, including his wife, his father, and all the rest of his family except his sister. Terrible things were done to him. Chance meant he avoided the gas chambers of Auschwitz and Dachau. He survived death by starvation or torture, even when most people around succumbed, through realising the power of his mind to give him choices about how he responded. These gruesome experiences taught Frankl the primary purpose of life, the quest for meaning. This quest was what sustained him and others who survived the death camps. He learnt what he said, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Mr Deputy Speaker, we have the freedom to choose. This is what makes us human. We have imagination, the ability to create another place in our minds beyond our present reality, however grim that is. We have conscience, our deep inner awareness of right and wrong, of the principles, the beliefs that govern our behaviour, and a sense for each of us of what our thoughts and actions are and whether we are in harmony with them. And we have independent will and the ability to act based on our self-awareness free of other influences. How people respond to the knowledge their life will soon end and that the end will be painful is entirely personal, and we should respect and enable that. Viktor Frankl also said, "Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Many people have written to me very clearly that they want to end their life at a time of their choosing and to transcend what they know will be painful and undignified end, and to take their last breath in the company of people they love. I want to just read a few things from people who have written to me about this. From Graham, who said, "I was diagnosed in May this year with terminal pancreatic cancer, and the passing of this legislation would give me the option of a dignified and less painful death. I want my family to remember me as someone who has made a choice to pass peacefully and with dignity, and not as someone ravaged by the final stages of cancer." And also from Sarah, who said, "Last week my partner was diagnosed with cancer. Of course, we're heading into unknown waters. I'm full of questions and fears, with all the best and worst case scenarios swirling in my head. You see, when serious illness occurs, you have little or no control over so much through that journey. I do believe absolutely that having some control over the end of your life provides peace, removes fear, and while only a small minority may choose assisted dying, for all those facing the same mortality, the knowledge that there was this piece of control left in their life makes all the difference. They're still going to die. It's just the journey to the final destination which is quite rightly placed in their hands." And from Ciara, who's 35, been diagnosed with an incurable cancer, as a person who, she says, loves painting, bushwalking and photography. She has rainbow hair. Friends have described her as the most alive person that they've ever met. She sounds like a wonderful person, but she knows that her life now won't be long. She said, "My poor health has taken so many choices away from me, and I'm grateful that you're fighting for me to have a final choice to leave this beautiful world on my own terms when the end comes." Mr. Deputy Speaker, some people, like my father, choose to embrace the passing of life, and he embraced his very quickly degrading body and the suffering that came with openness and spiritual depth. I sat with him over the 10 days he took to die from brain cancer after he'd chosen to stop eating and drinking. I don't know if he would have taken a different path if assisted death was an option. It wasn't, and so we didn't talk about it. But I reckon he would have been open to it because he was open to so much of everything in life, exploring the experience and life and death in the most intense way he could. It's our job as legislators to put all our energy into ensuring this bill is the best and safest it can be. I want to reassure the people who've written to me, and there have been hundreds, that I've read and considered all your views. They are both pleas from people who desperately want this bill passed because of what they're suffering or what they experienced with their dearest peoples, and also grave concerns from others about potential risks if the bill passes. We have a responsibility to make sure the concerns about unintended consequences are carefully addressed, especially fears that vulnerable elderly people might be pushed to end their life for their family's benefit, or that medical professionals whose conscience can't bring them to take part in assisting a person to end their life might have to be involved. We have to always make sure the legislation we pass does not inadvertently impact on the vulnerable, the ignorant, the gullible, those with divergent beliefs and the powerless. That's why I've paid so much attention to ensuring the concerns people have raised with me about perceived unintended consequences of this bill are in fact addressed. I'm comfortable this bill provides the rigorous checks needed to forestall any capacity for a person to be obligated, emotionally bullied, tricked, confused, overwhelmed or chastened into choosing an assisted death. And I want to acknowledge and thank the Honourable Mike Gaffney, who's put enormous work during the preparation of this bill into widely consulting the Tasmanian community and to learning from the experiences of other jurisdictions, including those that have had voluntary assisted dying in operation for years and have themselves reviewed it thoroughly. I can't thank him and his assistant, Bronte, enough for how diligent and open and neutral you have been and caring in providing me as a member and other people in the community all the evidence and material about this bill. We also have to make sure that in considering the views of people who don't support this choice, we don't so constrain the conditions for access to assisted dying that the bar becomes too high. And I was really gratified to hear Minister Courtney make that point, which is fundamentally that this bill's focus has to be on the rights of dying, vulnerable people to choose the terms of their death and in ensuring they can make an informed decision. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have our own life, just one of it, to explore, to express, to create, to nurture and to contribute. Life is a gift, and hopefully sometimes it can be a joy. We're responsible for our own lives, and I believe we're responsible for our own deaths. And for all the people who've contacted me and shared the stories of the suffering death of the person they love, and for those on that journey themselves today who want the right to end their own life on their own terms in a painless way, and for everybody else in our community in the future who would want to exercise their free will in this most intimate moment, I commend this bill to the House.
Thank you, Dr.